Welcome into the Dirty Leather Baseball Show. I'm your host, Danny. We have Clint over there. Clint, how has been your week lately?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
How has your week been?
It's been okay. Honestly, I've gotten used to at this point. We're about 10 episodes in. I've gotten used to having this on Wednesday nights. It kind of snuck up on me a little bit this week. I think a little bit of that's just the All-Star break. But no, this week's been good. I think, unrelated to baseball, I think this week's kind of hit me that summer's kind of come and gone. It's like the kids will be back in school before we know it. We're going to be heading closer to postseason baseball before we know it. It's going to be August before we know it. Preseason football is getting going. It's about to heat up a little bit on the show and just in sports in general. So I'm kind of excited, not wishing my life away, but some of these last couple of July days, I feel like life is kind of slowing down a little bit, but the sports is about to pick up a little bit here, and it's always a fast time of year going through summer and heading into that kind of football and holiday season. So I'm kind of excited for it to pick up the pace a little bit. How about yourself?
Yeah, you couldn't have put it any better. Ready. I mean, July it come and it has gone. I mean, we're already halfway through the July. And like you said, we are past the All-Star break now, and we're at trade deadline coming up. We'll do trade deadline stuff next week. But this week, we're going to look at an article from Fox Sports. It's ranking every MLB fan base satisfaction level post the All-Star break. So pretty much how happy these fans are, satisfied going into the second half of the season. So we'll start with the 30th team, and we'll work our way up to number 1. So let's start
do that. I will say before we get going, I would just kind of give, this article we're kind of critiquing or mocking. It's co-written by Jordan Schusterman, I believe I pronounced that correct, with Fox Sports, and Jake Mintz with Fox Sports. But just particularly speaking, Schusterman each week has a what happened in MLB this week, and I read that every single week. That's one of the best baseball recurring articles that I read on a regular basis. Just would give a shout out there a little bit. That was an easy direction for me this week. Kind of wanting to just look at something someone else had done, kind of looking at post All-Star break, kind of like we're doing 30-1 teams. He was an easy person to follow because he has a lot of great content. So I'd mention that before we got going on the A's here.
All right. So we'll start with, you said, the Oakland Athletics. I don't think there's any surprise here. And literally the first sentence in this little graphic is, this one is pretty simple. The A's are the worst team in baseball. You have any surprises?
This ball club was built to fail, assembled for the sole purpose of keeping fans away from the Coliseum as an excuse to relocate to Vegas. I mean, I think as a non-A's fan, I've had some fun with them this year, just seeing them rally with each other, kind of protesting. And even though it's going to be a lot for naught, it's been exciting. But no, I mean, this was an easy one. The odds of betting on who would have been last in this article for happiest fan base would have been what, like A's minus 10,000. That was a gimme. I was surprised, maybe I overdrank the Kool-Aid on them kind of getting on that little bit of that run, but I was surprised to still see them as bad as 25 and 67 at the time of publishing of this article we're looking at. I don't think there's a ton to say with this one. I think we could sit here and flashback to some previous episodes where we've really gotten all animated about how horrible this is for the A's and the drama with Rob Manfred, et cetera, and Oakland and Vegas, but I don't think there's a ton to say. This was a Captain Obvious. In this article, they don't even mention like a player. Like they don't even you'll look at the rest of them, they'll mention like a player or a contract that's not working out or a divisional race or something along those lines. Like they don't even mention a player. It's basically the whole paragraph, because these are all like a paragraph. The way that they did this article, it's basically like, yeah, this is just like bleak darkness. There's not much to take from it, at least from my end.
Yeah, I don't think any fan base in baseball has had a worse year than the A's. I mean, your team stinks night in and night out, and your team's going to be moving. So, I understand why their satisfaction is 30th. All right, let's head to the state of Missouri, where we actually have the 29th team, the St. Louis Cardinals, and the 28th team, the Kansas City Royals. Cardinals are 38-52 right now in 5th place in the NL Central. They're 11.5 out. And the Royals are 26-65, 5th place in the AL Central. St. Louis is the big one here because obviously St. Louis was projected to win the NL Central to begin the year. Obviously, they brought in Wilson Contreras from the Cubs and signed him as a free agent over to St. Louis. Obviously, their pitching was the questionable part of this baseball team, but this team has been awful. And for a great baseball city like St. Louis, I understand why their satisfaction level is not great going into the second half of the season.
I think this spot right here, how they kind of paired the Missouri teams, 28, 29, very well defined. If you looked at this article from 30 to 1, it well defined kind of the aim here, because you're looking at the Cardinals as a 38 and 52 team, and you're saying you're less pleased than a 26 and 65 Royals team, but it goes back to what you said with expectations. This was another one, and I get it. It's the bottom level ones. There's not a ton to say. The Royals, the point was essentially like Bobby Witt Jr. is really exciting and getting people to hang on. But I mean, that was about all they said for Kansas City in this article. Like I said, it's just a little snippet. It's kind of a paragraph, but it's essentially like Kansas City's rebuild couldn't be going worse. Its farm system is in disarray, and the big league team is shockingly close to as bad as an Oakland squad that was essentially constructed to lose baseball games. I mean, that was kind of their summary there, and there's not much else to say. And to add to that, I was a little shocked by how little they had to say about St. Louis. I mean, you have star power on this team in a Paul Goldschmidt and a Nolan Arenado, and that's a total. If you and I sat here and said, hey, who's one spot where it's just mail it in, it'd be St. Louis. So I think that was just a kind of a result of just a mail it in job. Not much to say. It's done. I mean, I'd get repetitive at this point.
Yeah, and obviously we all know St. Louis at 29. Kansas City at this point, it's just when are you going to find yourself out of the basement? I mean, you've been in this basement now in the worst division of baseball since you won the World Series back in 2015. And so you're creeping up on a decade already. It's just, when's it going to happen? I understand you have the Chiefs there, so it helps you a little bit in their sports fandom there. But, I mean, being 19.5 back in the AL Central is pretty embarrassing. It doesn't matter.
Well, I'm glad you said that, actually, because I want to pull up. I want to, throughout this, kind of relate to where these teams stand in terms of the standings, where these teams stand in terms of payroll within their division. And I mean, let's just say, okay, Royal standings, because you and I are sitting here laughing it off. I mean, you're right, though. I mean, we're talking about an AL Central with the Twins in the lead at 49 and 47, and not a single other team above 500.
Yeah.
Yeah, your Guardians are at 47 and 49, so you're right there. But I mean, Tigers 42-52, the Sox 40 and 56. That's gutter. You don't even have one. You have one team a game above 500 here, and the best you got is 28 and 68. I was surprised if I'd have done a little more time to deep dive throughout this. I would have been interested to see. They mentioned, the Royals farm system being down. I would have been more interested if I could have deep dove more to that, to what degree that's true, because then what there'd be excited about. I mean, that article literally gave you what Bobby Witt Jr. is pretty cool. Was about it.
Yeah, and you mentioned we mentioned the Royals at 28. Another team from the Central comes in at 27, and that'd be the Chicago White Sox. So they're 38, 50, and 54, 4th place in the Central, and 8 games out. They wrote here, with the out-of-touch Tony La Russa sent packing in 2023 was supposed to be the turning over of a new leaf for the Sox. This team is a dumpster fire. A broken toy.
Ha! Ha! Exclamation point.
Cautionary example of rebuild gone wrong. With Chicago 16 games under 500, and 8 back in the division, it's probably time for general manager Rick Hahn to sell off whatever he can at the deadline. The window is closing. The sun is setting. If I were a Sox fan, I'd be livid. Yeah, Chicago, if you would have told me back in 2021, when they were pretty much, they have all their toys out with Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez, Yohan Moncada, Tim Anderson, they had Jose Abreu, you had Lucas Giolito, Dylan Cease, even Dallas Keuchel.
Clint wasn't even needed for this segment about the White Sox right here. Danny's just going to let it roll.
And you tell me back in 2021 that this team in 2 years was going to be an absolute dumpster fire, I would have laughed at you. I thought they were going to win the Central for at least 2021, 2022, and 2023. Maybe somebody who could compete with them in 2024. They fell off a cliff like in the middle of last year, and it's been terrible. If you're a fan on the South Side in Chicago, yeah, you should be pissed off right now with this baseball team.
But I mean, just looking at it from a what's the word I'm looking for? A macro sense. I just am quite simply looking at their batting average from top to bottom here. One guy hitting a hair above 300. You look at it and it's like, I don't even understand. I mean, Benintendi hitting 292, Luis 275, Grandal 253. Then they have a little package of guys. Tim Anderson at 234 is disappointing. But other than that, it's nobody that I'm like, that's a gap closer. I think I talk about that a lot on a weekly basis. Kind of like, where do you close the gap of what we're not doing here? Nothing really screamed at me there. I mean, maybe. Yeah, there's some ugly ERA. Thank you. I appreciate it. Oh, yeah. Sorry. As my wife hands me a cup here that I forgot downstairs. Not a ton to say there. I think the most exciting point to talk about at this point about the White Sox is who they're selling off at the deadline. As lame as that sounds, I think that's kind of the territory you're at.
Yeah. I mean, Lucas Giolito's already been rumored to teams. Dylan Cease.
He's a goner.
Yeah, it's pretty. We'll get more in depth, obviously, next week in that one. But so Chicago comes in at 27. And then we have another clump. We have 26, the New York Mets. They're 42-48, fourth place in the NL East, 18.5 out. And then we have the San Diego Padres at 25. 43 and 47, fourth place in the NL West, 8.5 out. And these two teams, you can just say, obviously, they're clumped together. They're pretty much just spitting images of each other. High payrolls and very underachieving.
We're gonna title this a grind my gears segment, but this would have been it right here. Would have been this clump, and we've already gone into that in previous episodes, so I don't think it needs to be repetitive. I think it's a mouthful to the teams we just discussed at 27 through 30 that you came in behind. And I know this is just one article. This is just two guys' opinions that we're critiquing, analyzing. I get all that. The fact that a Mets team that was supposed to go bloodbath, head-to-head with my Braves, sitting here at 42 and 48, fourth place with the highest payroll in pro baseball history, and you still came in behind them. Like, not to go back to who we've already discussed, but that's a testament to the White Sox, the Royals, and the Cardinals, and lastly, the A's. If I get like one F-bomb for this episode, you fucking suck. If you're coming in for the criteria of this article to come in behind the Mets. I'd say that first before getting specific. I don't even think you have to get specific with these. It'd be repetitive and it'd be beating a dead horse on the side of the road at this point for us. Quite frankly, I'm surprised they weren't lower than 25 and 26. These two teams need to be the most disappointed fan bases realistically, other than the A's. I get that. The A's are going to get the title. The Cardinals, I give it to you. The Royals, let's get real. We knew the Royals were going to suck. I wouldn't put the Royals behind the Mets and the Padres. And the Sox, I wouldn't put them behind. I think the Mets and the Padres should be, instead of 25 and 26, that should at least be 28, 29. I thought that was a little generous. I mean, your will to live as those teams at this point, just mail it in. And I realize I'm a Braves fan, so it's funny mocking the Mets, but I'll even just speak on the Padres. You're sitting here at 43 and 47 with that payroll and that talent, and that window that you've sold out for. It's like we said earlier. I mean, for God's sakes, man, this article, and I've sat here and talked so highly about these guys, they're talking about effing Pokemon cards for the Padres here. They don't even have a player. I mean, it's because at this point they're ad nauseum like us. There's nothing else to say at this point. Mail it.
Yeah, and you look at both of these teams with the Padres and the Mets. They have, well, first of all, it doesn't help with the Mets that they're one of the rivals, the Atlanta Braves in the division, literally just is running
The
away
best
with it.
team
Like,
in baseball.
it's like it doesn't help that your team, the Mets, have been so pathetic this year, and then you look at the Braves, who are on pace to win the world. Like, obviously they should be the favorite to win the World Series right now, who've been absolutely insane. And then it doesn't also help that they're both fourth in their division, where you look at a team like the Marlins, who aren't supposed to be that good at baseball, who's top right now in the NL East up there. You look at the Diamondbacks and even the Giants, who are in the West, who are ahead of the Padres. That doesn't help either.
I'm glad that you mentioned that about the Marlins, because I'm going to have to bring in a payroll number here ad nauseum. Mets $346 million payroll, first in the league. Miami $96 million payroll, 22nd in the league.
Yeah,
that's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. That's why there's no specifics in this article. It's just kind of like, you can tell these guys are like, yeah, these guys suck. Let's talk about Pokemon cards. Yeah, cool beans. All right, let's talk about the Angels.
Yeah.
At least with the Angels, they got a couple. We're talking about Trout and Ohtani. It's like the Mets, they're not even mentioning it. Of all the names we could say between those two teams, the Padres and the Mets, the Alonsos, the Machados, the Sotos, didn't even get mentioned. That's how well done it is.
Yeah. All right. We will head to 24, and I'll look at that. Another team that has superstars on it. The Los Angeles Angels. 45-46, fourth place in the AL West, 7 games out. Obviously, the Angels have been going on past a decade now. You can argue they've had the best player in baseball every single year out. If it was Mike Trout or Shohei Ohtani for, we're going between 10 to 15 years at this point, and they are one of the most have the most disappointing fan bases in baseball.
When they signed Pujols from the St. Louis, and we thought that was the coolest thing ever.
It's every single year, and now they're going to be talked about for another week and a half about, is their Shohei Ohtani be traded? That's just what it's going to be now. Obviously, the Angels probably aren't making the playoffs. You're going to hear about Ohtani for the next, again, a week and a half about, is this guy on the move? Obviously, he's a free agent at the end of the year. How pathetic. Like, if you're the Angels, what else can you do?
I think and not to relate this to the NFL, because that's not what we're discussing here, but like, I speak as a Falcons fan. You have certain windows that you have to keep up with the fan base, where if you're not winning, it's a window of like the promise and the faith. And I speak on since the 28-3 debacle for the Falcons have sucked. But the last year or two or so with this new regime, Arthur Smith, etc., Terry Fontenot, you've had the faith of a rebuild to kind of get behind. To your point, I don't know at what point the Angels don't kind of lose the faith there. It's kind of like, what are we? Okay, so like, let's say they do trade Ohtani. You're going to get an absolute haul. What changes your struggles with pitching development and hitting on your high contract players outside of, say, a Trout, outside of, say, an Ohtani? Where does it change to make yourself? Because you can sit here and talk about, oh, we got all these top picks for Ohtani. Okay, well, you got to pick players that are worth it. Where does it change to get excited about at the cost of losing the star value of, let's get real, if it wasn't for Ohtani, I mean, I even say this with respect to Trout, you would forget the Angels exist. Trout couldn't even keep them above water by himself at this point. They're lucky to have Ohtani there. I mean, I remember when Trout was without Ohtani, kind of kept them above water. I'm not even convinced he could without Ohtani, because who knows where they would be at this point. He's not going anywhere right now. I'm going to be like jaw on the floor. But that's the talking point. I mean, I say this as, I'm not even saying this considering he'd go to Atlanta. Like, that'd be like skin in the game for me. I'd love to see Ohtani go somewhere else. This guy deserves to be in playoff baseball. We've never seen Trout do it. The most we've seen of Trout is the World Baseball Classic. That's great. I'm not discrediting that. I want to see that guy in October and November. I want to see that guy in the championship series. I want to see him even in just a playoff game. I don't want to see Ohtani waste away there. I mean, yeah, I'd be afraid to see him go to like a Yankees or something, but I just would like to see the guy in postseason baseball, and it's not going to happen there with the Angels. It's not.
Nope. Not at all. All right. So we can move off of Ohtani, so obviously we'll talk about him more next week. Next one, the Colorado Rockies coming at 23, 34, and 57. Fifth place in the NL West, 18 games back. I don't know. I mean, they're the Rockies, and obviously they're gonna stink. And Colorado won a Stanley Cup last year, won a NBA Finals this year. So all right, and they have Russell Wilson, so they're okay. They need a team that stinks.
We could just lastly say, like, the last sentence of this paragraph is just, plus Elias Diaz just won All-Star Game MVP, exclamation point. That's awesome. It's kind of like that's about all there's to say. Let's move on to the next one and buy some time. Let's move to the Tigers.
Yeah, all right. Detroit Tigers, 22, 39, 50, third place in the AL Central, 5.5 out. If they wrote this article maybe 3 weeks ago, maybe they'd be a little higher because I feel like the Tigers' satisfaction realizes that okay, we actually still stink at baseball, even though we're in the AL Central, who is awful.
To the point I said about the most interesting thing at this point, I said about the Angels about are they going to deal Ohtani? Hell, or it was the White Sox. I said it's the most interesting thing. Are they going to deal Giolito? It's like, hell, I think about it at this point. It's like is Rodriguez a goner as far as the Tigers? That's about the most interested I am.
Yeah, I think that's just you're mailing and you're figuring out 2024 at this point.
This is random as hell, but I would just lastly say about Detroit, I was interested to see them take the kid Max Clark, 3rd overall. That's one of those classic, like I swear I've been seeing that guy's Instagram videos of him playing like high school baseball for 7 years. So to just finally seeing him get drafted, I was like, oh, nice. All right, cool. Yeah, good for you. So he's going to Detroit. I would just mention that. That's exciting having a top 3 pick, but I think trade deadline is just kind of what can we sell off. That's all I about have to say there.
Well, if he's been playing high school baseball for 7 years, he was really, really good or really, really, really dumb.
Nah, he's going to be a great player. I was just interested. I think he's from Indiana or something. So that's not the culture shock going to Detroit. But I was interested to see that guy that kind of like the kid Mikey that plays high school basketball. That you're like, man, haven't you been playing for like 8 years?
Yeah,
that was just random snippet.
Or those college football players that you're watching, you're like, why is this guy still in school? And he's got 9 degrees. He's been there for 9 years. He's got 6 different red shirts.
Okay, well, I was going to say the Stetson Bennett scholarship until you said 9 degrees, but yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah. I know the COVID didn't help with all that stuff either. But all right, move on. All right, we got another clumper here. We got 20 the Chicago Cubs. Or no, I lied. All right, 21 Washington Nationals. Nationals, it's pretty easy. Bad team. They just drafted Dylan Cruz. That's all I got to say about them.
I was about to say the exact same thing. I think Dylan Cruz is kind of the buzz to be ridden right now for them. That's about all there's to say.
Yeah, that's all right. 20 now, the Chicago Cubs, and they're with 19, the Pittsburgh Pirates, both in the NL Central. Both are 11.5 games out in the Central. Cubs 42 and 47, Pirates 41 and 49. The Pirates, we all know, had a great start to the year. They looked great in April, May, and then they came crashing down again. And the Cubs, they've been pretty underwhelming here the last few years, and they had a stretch in the season where they looked like they were going to get above water. They fell down again. Maybe they're going to trade Cody Bellinger at the deadline. That's something that's been talked about. But the Pirates just drafted Paul Skeens at number 1, so that's something to be excited about. In Pittsburgh and Chicago, figure it out, I guess. I mean, I don't know what to say about them.
Not to steer away from the teams we're discussing, because I know we're discussing the Cubs and the Pirates, but you're like, the Brewers in the lead by 2.5 over Cincinnati. Like, nobody wants you to win. I say that with respect to the Brewers. It's like pulling for the Reds there. The Cubs are 7.5 back at 3rd place. They're not going to do shit. Cardinals are dead meat. The Pirates 10.5 back. Look, we're all just proud to see the Pirates at 42 and 54. Be excited about the draft pick. I'm not going to give too much faith until that's a franchise that will spend some money. I had the payroll number here. Pittsburgh sitting at 28th in the league, and there's a big gap between 28 and 27. They're in the gutter. respectfully can't take them too seriously. I take the Cubs seriously as a blue blood franchise in terms of going forward, but this year not seriously. I mean, as a Braves fan, like my main interest in them is just seeing how Dansby's doing. But I don't know. It's weird. It's like this article's focus was on fan base satisfaction to this point. So I think I had to keep reminding myself not how I feel now with these teams, but how I felt going into this year with these teams. So in reminding myself that, I thought that was an appropriate spot, putting the Pirates at 19th. The fact they've even been somewhat competitive has been nice, because that was a team I had about had on the verge of an A's, about had on the verge of a Reds, and I was like, you guys aren't even trying. To see them sniffing 500, I know they're not there, has been exciting. So I think 19 is pretty appropriate. The Cubs are kind of stale. I mean, I think that was a fair spot. That's about all I'd have to say.
All right, here comes another surprising team that I did not think was going to be here at the start of the season. 18, the Seattle Mariners, 45-44, third place in the AL West, and they're 6 games out. Obviously, Seattle broke their long playoff drought last year. This year, I thought they were going to compete with the Astros for the AL West, and it just has not gone their way. Obviously, they have Julio Rodriguez, one of the most exciting young players in baseball, and they're sitting here at third place. Obviously, things can still change here in the second half of the season, but I did not expect this team to be in third in the place in the AL West. I thought they could actually seriously win the division. Just back in April when you started this thing, and then obviously
you thought you'd have had more moderation with the Rangers surge.
Yeah,
I would have thought you'd have seen a little bit of that in the Mariners. You're right. I would have agreed with you.
Yeah, that's something there. All right, anything else you want to go on Mariners, or do you want to move on to?
I don't think there's a ton else to say other than what you just did. I think there's a little bit of a gap they've missed just kind of by the Rangers surge. I think J-Rod's obviously the face of it and reason to be excited. But I mean, even just relating back to the article that we're talking about, there's not much here. I mean, they say winning 7 of 9 heading into the break, combined with Julio Rodriguez's record-breaking home run derby performance in front of the home crowd, certainly helped cover up an otherwise underwhelming first half for Seattle. I think that was about like a move on. About summed it up.
We got all right. 3 more teams clumped together here. 17th, the Boston Red Sox. 16th, the New York Yankees, and 15th, the Toronto Blue Jays. All in the AL East, all in 3rd place, 4th place, and 5th place.
I think an easy way to start. This is the very first sentence they have right here. They say somebody in the AL East has to finish 5th. Pick your poison. Who's finishing 5th?
Ooh, I'm gonna go the Yankees. I think the Yankees finish 5th.
Damn.
Unless they do something huge here in the week, but again, Aaron Judge, I saw him actually running the bases today, so that's the first time he's actually been able to run the bases since he got.
I'll be different than you because I was between the Yankees. I'll be different, say the Sox, which hurts me. It's not going to be the Jays.
No,
the 3 teams in discussion here. This is. I'm sitting here. I'm doing the Emmanuel Acho. Like, I'm going to take something super simple and I'm going to act like it's super complicated kind of thing. Like, it's between the Yankees or the Sox. I completely understand the Yankees argument. I think there's a little bit more faith to be had there than the Sox, but I get why they clumped these together. I would have put the Jays a hair above the Yankees and the Sox. Personally, I think there was more excitement going into the All-Star break. You got a lot of participation from the Blue Jays. I know you had a lot of guys that were second-place guys, but a lot of activity, a lot of buzz, versus like one Yankee, one Red Sox kind of thing. They're in 3rd place versus battling for that 5th spot. They're not going to fall into that 5th hole. And I get it. They put the Blue Jays at 15 versus Yankees 16, Sox 17, but I might have had the Jays a hair higher than they had. And I won't go into the next 2 teams we discussed, but I think I might have had the Jays a hair higher.
Yeah, I agree with that one. I see Toronto a little ahead of them. All right, so if we want to go to the next 2 teams, we have 2 Central from the AL Central.
You go ahead and run away with that.
We have the Cleveland Guardians and the Minnesota Twins. Minnesota at 14, Guardians at 13. This was written, the Guardians were first place in the Central. They're not first place in the Central now. They're like 2 games out. Minnesota's in first place. Yeah, it's been a disappointing season for Cleveland. They've been, I mean, all their magic from last year has run out.
I'll be right back.
Been pretty injured so far this season, but I don't think Cleveland's that great of a baseball team to begin with. I mean, they can't hit home runs. They've been injured with McKenzie being out, Shane Bieber being now out. Here, it's been talked about, will Shane Bieber be traded at the deadline? That's probably shot now because he's been injured. And then you have Minnesota, who I think is the better team than Cleveland. But again, this division is just so bad. It doesn't matter who comes out of it. They're gonna lose in the first round of the playoffs if they're playing whoever they're playing in the AL. If they're gonna play the Astros, the Rays, the Orioles, whoever they're gonna play in the wild card round, they're gonna get beat. So it's just been a down year. I mean, the Twins and the Guardians have been literally sniffing 500 for most of the season. I mean, they get over it and then they fall back under it. It's just been the season all year here with both these ball clubs. So the satisfaction level for the Guardians and Twins should be the same. It's just one's going to win the division and we get bounced in the first round. The other one's just going to hopefully get a nice draft pick. All right, because he left, we'll move on from this one. We'll have the Dodgers at 11. Houston Astros, they're clamped together. The little part of the article says, we've grown so used to these teams casually kicking everyone's butt and taking names in their respective leagues over much of the past decade. The standards for the satisfaction for them are so high. All right, I moved off of Cleveland, Minnesota, and went to the Astros, Dodgers.
I'm glad you did. My apologies.
Yeah.
I think that might be the first time I've ever walked off screen other than grabbing the dog, but I had to use the restroom.
Houston's troubling rash of injuries on both sides of the ball and Dodgers' ongoing pitching woes have knocked each team down a peg for certified juggernaut status, yet they are both in reasonable positions to clinch division crowns by the end of the season, because of course they are. So Houston 12, Dodgers at 11. I would not expect these two teams to be here back in April, but this is where they're at. Again, both these two teams still can obviously win their division. These teams have been underwhelming to their standards so far through the first part of the season. But again, I don't see it. These two teams know what the heck they're doing. I mean, you don't go to like 5-6 straight AL championship series. Go to 3-4 World Series. You just don't not know what you're doing. I mean, they'll be fine. I don't have no worries with the Astros. I have no worries with the Dodgers. Obviously, the Dodgers are going to come out here in the next week and a half. Same thing with the Astros and make a huge trade. That's what they do every deadline. That's what they're going to do. And so your satisfaction maybe level, if you're a fan, isn't great so far because they're a little down this year, but it will be high again here by July 31st.
I think you're absolutely right. I think 11 and 12 here. I don't want to say awkward spot, but I think that was kind of when we're at the range. We've passed average at that 15 range. It's going to get a little nitpicky here versus getting to teams that are obviously excited. For example, like an Atlanta Braves are obviously excited. Like, I think this was a good spot to kind of pair them. I'd give a nudge to the Dodgers over the Astros, just the fact that they have a divisional share of a lead versus the Astros in second. Especially with the Rangers surge. I mean, nobody saw that coming. But I thought it was fair to put them there at 12 and 11. I'd get repetitive just saying what you already said. They're not going anywhere. They're gonna be there in the dance at the end. And that's essentially what they said in the article. I think the Dodgers are a team. They get a little healed up. The Astros are a team. See if we get a little bit of fatigue from the Rangers at the fact you hadn't been here before versus the Astros. This is routine. You're absolutely right. These two teams might be the most routine in recent years in terms of they're going to be there. You're right.
Yeah. All right. Moving on now, we are in the top 10. In the top 10, the Milwaukee Brewers come in at 10. Obviously, the Brewers have been fighting. I mean, they've been pretty much the standard here in the NL Central, but the Reds are obviously catching them. Actually, when this article was written, they were 1 game back in the NL Central, but I believe they've taken that over after. So they're 2.5 games in front right now over the Reds.
I was about to say, I think I just said 2.5 when we were talking about that earlier.
But with Milwaukee, I feel like Milwaukee is this team. Like you said before, nobody wants them to win the Central. Everyone wants to see the Reds. I want to see the Reds personally. The Brewers could be maybe one of the most hated teams in baseball. They didn't do anything. They didn't do anything wrong. Everyone just wants to see what this Reds team can do when it gets October. I mean, no disrespect to Christian Yelich, but I think everyone wants to see
how good do you feel at this point if you're in the Brewers room and you're looking at what you're standing with the Central? The Pirates are irrelevant, respectfully. The Cardinals are irrelevant, respectfully. I'm going to go and say it. The Cubs aren't doing shit either. This is a 2-team race at this point. Are you afraid of this Cincinnati team that's kind of like on crack at this point?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I say that for a Cincinnati team that's 3-7 of their last 10, so it's cooled. They've kind of cooled off of that Ellie De La Cruz high, but I mean, still only 2.5 back. That's who everyone's pulling for outside of Milwaukee. I think you feel pretty good. That Milwaukee team's built better for the now than Cincinnati, and I'm not taking the other 3 teams seriously. I think we're underselling the comfort that Milwaukee should be feeling right now. 52-43 with a 2.5 game lead. You know, they got a 3-game advantage in terms of the last 10 with the Reds, so they're trending in more of a positive direction, kind of getting past some of that De La Cruz high. I'd be feeling pretty damn good if I was Milwaukee right now. I think I want to pull for the Reds, like you said. I'm going to pull for the Reds. They can win it, but I wouldn't be betting my money on it.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, let's move on to the number 19, the San Francisco Giants. The Giants right now are a game out of first place in the NL West behind the Dodgers. The Giants are a team I did not expect to be sitting at number 2 in the NL West on July, whatever day is, 19th. Obviously, this was a Dodgers-Padres division race, and it's obviously not. The Giants, we're going to talk about another team that has been pretty great in the West so far this season, but the Giants were one of these surprise teams, I think. The Giants, you could argue, had a horrible offseason. Just from the Aaron Judge stuff, the Carlos Correa stuff, and this baseball team is in position to make the playoffs right now.
The Giants, I feel like the Giants, if I had to pick one team in this league, and like this isn't like a great point, so I'm not going to talk long. This is a whole lot of kind of like airheaded comment. But if I had to be like one team that I know is like a badass team that I feel like I'm not in touch with, it would be the Giants. Like if this was like SEC football and I had to pick a team that I'm just like, I know that's a good team. Like I know LSU is a good team, but I have no touch with them. Like they're not maybe that 1 or 2 team, but they're sitting here at 9th in terms of satisfaction. They're sitting here 3rd in the NL West, which is only 2.5 back. I mean, I've got it pulled up. I mean, you're behind the Dodgers team, who's the Dodgers. Hell no, I take that back. That's a publication. They're currently a game back of the Dodgers, 2 games ahead of the Diamondbacks. It's worth noting the Diamondbacks are in town playing my Braves right now. So you gotta feel good about that. I mean, you're looking at the last 10. You're looking at the Giants at 8-2 versus the Diamondbacks at 3-7. They're hanging right there with the Dodgers. But it's hard for me to comment on them versus the Dodgers because I admittedly think I'm a lot more informed about LA. But I damn sure you're sitting here pulling for the Giants. I don't know. That'd be one I'd kind of ask you if you had more thoughts. I feel like I'm a little less informed as far as the Giants as I should be to be here in July.
No, I just think the Giants are one of these teams that, like you said, like they're like LSU football. They're always around. I mean, go back to 2021 where that team won over 100 games, won the West, where I didn't think they could do anything, and then they got bounced by the Dodgers in the first round. But the Giants, they're always cooking, figure things out. And I mean, again, they're one of those teams that don't get benefit because they play on the West Coast. I mean,
yeah, I think maybe that's a product. Like I said, this is a very East Coast guy. Maybe that's some of a product of just how, I don't want to use the word dominant, but the Dodgers have been that West Coast team of national presence. Maybe that's part of it. Because I think back to like when we were younger, when we were more like living out, growing up kind of thing. Like, well, the Dodgers were more of that team. Maybe that was. I had a particular interest. Buster Posey's from my hometown, so like that was cool. But like as far as the Giants and some of those teams, but like I like that team that's a little under the radar. I get that vibe from a Jock Peterson, obviously fond of him here from the Atlanta area. That's a team fond of the radar. I feel like if I had to pick one that we're talking about tonight, 30-1, it's like a team that I feel like I didn't have a lot to say about, but I could look up here in September, October, November and be like, oh shit, that was pretty nice. I might not have been right there. It might be San Francisco.
yeah, I agree with that. All right, moving on to number 8, the Philadelphia Phillies. The Phillies obviously were the NL representative in the World Series last year.
Hot team in the playoffs.
After the magic last October in the blockbuster edition of Trey Turner, the Phillies entered the season with strategic expectations. After stumbling out of the gate, Rob Thomas' club righted the ship with an 18-8 record in June and resorted last autumn's good vibes.
You saw me jump up right there. You said Rob Thompson's club. I heard you say Rob Thomas's club, and I was like, went straight like Matchbox 20 vibes immediately.
Yeah, I feel like the Phillies, I don't have much to say with them, but obviously they signed Trey Turner in the offseason. They had Bryce Harper out for a little bit he had Tommy John. They obviously lost Rhys Hoskins in spring training when he tore his ACL. So they're battling back from that, but this team looks like a team that can do damage again in October. It just, like anything, they play in the division with the best team in baseball that is phenomenal. So it's gonna hurt. And again, this Phillies team, it's not like last year the Phillies were the best team in baseball and went to the World Series and lost. I mean, they were the third team in their division. They were the last wild card spot, and they got hot. I mean, I didn't expect this team to go win the World Series this year, even though they had like a Trey Turner to their team. I just think this team is still, maybe talent-wise, you can say it's the second best team in the NL East. But
So in terms of the wild card for the NL right now, you'd have Philly sitting at third. To add to your point of they're in the same division with the Braves, got the Giants at 54 and 41, D-backs at 53 and 42, and like I said, they're in Atlanta, and the Phillies at 52 and 42. To have had the Harper absence, to have had Trey Turner, and that'd be a flashback when I went to a previous, a couple weeks ago episode. Trey Turner's picked it up some from an initial struggle, but that's after stumbling out of the gate. Rob Thompson's, like you said, or you already said this, Rob Thompson's club righted the ship with an 18-8 record in June that partially restored last autumn's good vibes. Phillies are sneaky here, I would speak just in terms of, let's look at the NL East. What are they, outside of the Braves, what are they scared of in terms of getting to hang in that wild card standings? I think the Marlins will simmer off some. I think the Phillies will find a little bit of a surge there in terms of battling for second place. Because let's get real, every other team in the NL East is battling for second place right now. They're battling for wild card spots. That's what they know realistically. Phillies are a sneaky team here. I'm not worried about them in terms of the NL East, but in terms of getting into the wild card and kind of their identity last year is that hot team. Could be deja vu.
Definitely. All right. So moving on, I'm going to clump these two teams together, even though they haven't clumped them together, but I feel like they're kind of the same. The Diamondbacks are at 7, and the Miami Marlins are at 6. Two teams that I did not expect to be competing in their division. Obviously, the Marlins aren't competing in their division. Obviously, have the Braves in their division. But just where they're at, sitting here in July, I did not expect these two teams to be there. And obviously Arizona, you bring in the Corbin Carroll aspect of it. You got Zach Gallen. And then you have
A
the
nice shout out mentioning Corbin Carroll. I mentioned last week my buddy Tommy, who's the biggest Braves fan I know. He was at the game last night, got a Corbin Carroll autograph at batting practice. Casually. He's one of those people who's like good at that. I saw that. I thought that was pretty lit. Just to mention that. Corbin Carroll, you name dropped there. He got an autograph for him last night. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and all I have
you talked about those two teams, and it's interesting. You just paired them. Payroll geek over here, right? They're paired together on the payroll tracker in terms of MLB ranks. 21st in the league, Arizona, $116 million. 22nd, Miami, $96 million. So big drop off there, but they're paired right next to each other. I think that's pretty interesting in terms of where we found them in terms of fan. What's the theme of this article? Fan satisfaction. Yeah.
All right. Talking about fan satisfaction, then we have a clumper together at the 5th team and the 4th team. The Texas Rangers are come at 5, and the Tampa Bay Rays come in at number 4. Texas Rangers obviously are getting back to playing great baseball again after about 5 years off from that. And Tampa's always been around here, floating around. Obviously, they got off to a hot start. They've kind of fell back to earth a little bit. Actually, they are now tied in the division in the East with the Baltimore Orioles. So the Orioles have caught them today after they beat the Dodgers. But I feel like right now these two teams are in different. I mean, even you could say Texas. I mean, Texas kind of got to a stretch here late before the All-Star break where they were terrible. I mean, they kept losing games. They obviously traded for Chapman already. Coming out of the pen, he's been pretty electric for them since he got there. But I mean, these two teams, we sit here talking about them at 4 and 5. I wouldn't be shocked if we sit here in September, October, talking about these two teams in the wild card round, and the Orioles win the division and the Astros win the division.
All great points. I just thought it was interesting to have had them paired right here. The Rangers are big spenders and the Rays aren't. And yeah. I think it's weird, though. At the same time, I'm not sure that I'm not more excited as a fan and more satisfied with the Rangers. And that probably doesn't make sense. But it's almost they put their money where their mouth is and they're seeing it. And that's even adding the fact that you've got nothing out of DeGrom. You've got nothing. Hell, if they had DeGrom, my Lord, we'd have been sitting here having this as a top 3 team in the league. I mean, we're already discussing it potentially. I would put him as a top 3 team in the league, but you'd be there. I mean, you're talking about a Rangers team that's 9th in the league in terms of payroll. You're talking about a Rays team on the flip side that is 27th in the league in payroll. I get why the Rays got the nod, but that one was very appropriately clumped for different reasons. But I get why they did. God, I'm pulling for both of them. I want to see this Rays team take this AL East. I want to see this Rangers team take this AL West from the Astros and close the door on them. And they can do it.
Yeah, and you mentioned
these are two of the most fun. These might be my Braves. In terms of like fun, exciting teams, the Reds deserve to be in this conversation. Those two might be in with the Reds as the 2 of the top 3. That's just exciting. Even if you're not a fan of those teams, you're pulling for those teams right now.
Yep. All right. Talk about the AL East. The number 3 team is the Baltimore Orioles, who are now tied with the Rays in the top of the East.
Orioles would have been another one.
Yeah. This is pretty self-explanatory with this team. I mean, this team has been awful for over 5 years now, and this team got all their young guys up, look great, and it's a good time to be an Oriole fan. I mean, they had that little run last year. They got close, didn't make a wild card spot, but were very close to making a wild card spot to get in the playoffs in it. And now they're sitting here going almost into August, tied in first place in the AL East, which is great for this baseball team, especially when you look at who the teams in the East are: the Blue Jays, the Yankees, the Red Sox. If you would have told me back in April that the top two teams in the East going into the trade deadline were going to be the Orioles and the Rays, I would have laughed at you with the Blue Jays and the Yankees and the Red Sox there. But this is where we're at. And if you're Baltimore, you should feel very great right now. And if you're Baltimore, like we said with Tampa, you got to take advantage of this. I mean, you have a Yankees and Red Sox team who could literally finish 4th and 5th in the division. You got to take advantage of this while you can. And I mean, if you're Baltimore right now, you should feel really great about this.
The Yankees in 5th place right now at 8.5 back and 2 and 8 in their last 10. Yankees are done. I don't even care about them. They're done. Sox at 8 games back. The Sox aren't doing anything here. They're done. Write them off. 3 teams in here to be sitting here tied with the Rays. I mean, and this is ad nauseum, but I mean, we're talking about an Orioles team that's next to last in the league in spending. We're talking about a Rays team that's 4th last in the league in spending versus a division that's full of top 10 spenders. This is, no matter how we end this year, for conversational purposes, let's say the Atlanta Braves win the World Series. That's awesome. The theme of this year and what we marvel at this year needs to be how insanely competitive and unorthodox, off-script, non-traditional, ahead of schedule the AL East was. It's the most exciting point of this year, regardless of how it falls. It would be so thrilling to see either the Orioles or the Rays take it. I thought the interesting point of this art, the little paragraph, they did for each team talking about the Orioles, was they said, can Tyler Wells, Cano, and Felix Bautista carry the shaky pitching staff all the way to October?
Yeah.
I damn sure hope so. I think they can. We'll see. Logic would probably say, oh, it'll fizzle out, but I don't want to be lame like that.
All right. Moving on now. Number 2, the Cincinnati Reds. Obviously, it's just the hype train about this young team. I mean, you have Ellie De La Cruz. The team is phenomenally just like recognizable. Everybody wants to watch this team. If you're a Reds fan, I mean, last year your team was at one point so bad in April, like you couldn't even watch the game. And now they turn around, almost 15, 16 months later, and they're second on this list in fan satisfaction. That's pretty darn good. And it doesn't matter if this team makes playoffs or not. They're going to fight all the way till the end. They're going to be one of these teams that you're going to be really excited about going into 2024. And it's a good time now to be a Reds fan down there in Cincinnati.
I mean, hell, that was the franchise. If you'd have asked me, if we'd have been doing this show 3 months before the season started, we'd have been sitting here chalking them up as one of those franchises like they don't even try. Their ownership's not even trying. The fan base is about mailed it in. Traditionally, they're such a great traditional team. And I say that as somebody like, you have that geographical sense, Midwestern sense of that team and that fan base. I don't even have that. I don't know. Like, I knew one Reds fan personally in my life. I had a French teacher in college who was from the Ohio area and graduated from Xavier, who was super into him, and that was cool. But, I don't even know that, and I know that that's a team that fans love that team. Traditionally, they're a great team. No affiliation to that team. This is the feel-good story for me this year. And, I would have liked to, in hindsight, been a hair more prepared for this part of the segment. Because everyone's talking about De La Cruz. What about the next guys? What about the guys that aren't getting discussed here? Because he can't even be doing this all by himself with the low payroll this team has, the head schedule this team has. Admitting when you're wrong, I had written this team off. I was like, Number 2, you could have told me that this team was spoiler alert, I just fumbled really hard. Spoiler alert, the Braves are number 1. You could have put the Reds at number 1, and I would have said, yep.
Yep. All right, and you did mention the Braves at number 1, so I'm going to save time here. I'm not even going to talk about them because obviously you're a Braves fan, and obviously I don't know what they're talking about. They're just so freaking good at baseball. It's not even funny if you're. I mean, it's just they should be number one.
I wouldn't go off on too much of a tangent here. We're kind of coming up on the last couple of minutes of the show, but just to give a little snippet of it, I think in terms of satisfaction, you could argue it's a fine line. I might put the Reds above the Braves here. From that underdog aspect of just outlasting expectations. I mean, look, if I'd asked you 2 months before the season who was going to be leading the NL East July 19th, you would have said Atlanta.
Yeah.
You would ask me, I would have said Atlanta. If you'd asked us where a record prediction on, say, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Texas, we would have been way off versus where we would have been probably with Atlanta. I understand why they put Atlanta here at number one. I mean, it's dominant. Number one in OPS in the league by a chunk. Number two in batting average in the league. Number one in home runs. Number two in RBIs. I mean, it's basically Rangers, Braves for all these hitting categories. So they're like, oh, yeah, maybe their pitching's not that great. ERA, fourth in ERA. Pardon me, my phone's being annoying. I don't even need to go deeper than that. There's not a single category. Even if I looked at opponent ERA, I think we looked at opponent batting average the last episode, and it was like 10. And that was like the weak stat. Hell, who's to say Alex Anthopoulos is not going to go make moves here at the deadline? The whole experience, and this will be my last statement because I won't go rambling about it because we get the point. The Braves are the best team in the league. The experience top to bottom, there's no better fan experience than the Battery right now. There's no better fan satisfied in terms of there was a lot of fear around this fan base at one point being owned by Time Warner and being owned by a big company and not spending. It's the 8th highest payroll in the league. The Battery's only added to that. I speak as I'm 27 going on 28 years old. Everybody's talking about going to the Braves all the time. It's not slowing down. I could sit here and go on. We're wrapping up here in the next couple of minutes. I could sit here and break down every contract that Alex Anthopoulos is treated like William Shakespeare. But we don't even need to hear all that. I would sum it up as just there's not a single thing not to be excited about as a Braves fan right now. This team's not going anywhere. This team's going to be good for the next 5 years. My closing statement would just be, we are so satisfied and so excited and it's so fun. I would just love to look back at all this 10 years from now and say, win one more. This will be my last statement because you know me. I'll get rolling and be like, Clint, wrap it up. Justly. Win one more. The identity of the 90s is, yes, the Braves were the team of the 90s, but they only closed it once. Heartbreak in 91. Heartbreak in 96. Keep going on. Close it here. You've already got the one that we had 2 years ago. This is the best team in the league. There's not a single weak spot in this lineup. There's depth. There's experience. We've been around the block. This year is the year to take it. It's World Series or bust. I'll say that for it's World Series or bust. The NL East is over. It's over. It is over. It's over. We know it's over. Everyone knows it's over. That loser that said it was over for the Mets, Sal Luocano, or whatever the hell his name is last year, already knows it's over. It's over.
You know what else is over? This show. All right. You got any last? I got no more closing thoughts. You got anything? Nope.
No.
All right. So we'll be back next week. We'll probably do more trade deadline stuff next week. But thanks for listening. Have a great day. And see you next week.